In the late 1920s, the Soviet Union was trying to reshape human behavior, and architects were asked to help make it happen. People were supposed to eat collectively, live communally, and gradually transform into the new socialist citizen. But the residents had other plans. They decided to resist the architecture itself. People began reinstalling private kitchens inside their apartments. And that is what turned Narkomfin into one of the strangest experiments in architectural history. The real question is, can architecture actually change the way people live?
When we talk about modern architecture, we usually focus on form, materials, or aesthetics. But some projects turn architecture into a political and social instrument. And Narkomfin is probably one of the most important examples. Drake explains it to us.
After the Russian Revolution of 1917, Marxist ideas rapidly spread throughout the Soviet Union. At the same time, cities were facing a severe housing crisis, and the state had taken responsibility for providing housing. Architects were now tasked with designing an entirely new way of life for a new society. It was in this context that Moisei Ginzburg and Ignaty Milinis designed the Narkomfin building in Moscow between 1928 and 1930. But Narkomfin was never intended to be just a residential complex. It was a social laboratory. The core idea behind the project was something called the Social Condenser. The idea was that architecture could intensify social interaction. Private apartments were intentionally minimized, while functions such as kitchens, dining halls, laundries, and childcare facilities were designed as shared communal spaces. The goal was not only efficiency. Constructivist architects believed that by collectivizing domestic labor, women could be liberated from household duties and participate more actively in social and productive life. This is where architecture directly intersects with gender politics. Increasing women's participation in the workforce also meant expanding the total labor force of the socialist state.
One of the most important aspects of Narkomfin is the placement of its communal spaces. Unlike Le Corbusier in the Unité d'Habitation, where public services were integrated directly into the main building volume. We talked about the Unité d'Habitation in more detail in the previous video.
Ginzburg designed the collective services in a separate building. This decision was not merely functional. He wanted to draw residents' attention toward the realm of collective life. Residents were forced to move between buildings in order to access services, pulling them out of their private units. The movement itself became part of the social experience. Even the corridors were designed with this goal in mind. In Narkomfin, the corridors are attached to the facade, rather than placed in the center of the plan. They are wider and receive natural light. We'll discuss the comparison between these two projects in more detail later. Ginzburg was trying to transform the corridor from a purely circulatory space into a place for encounters, pauses, and social interaction. People do not always behave according to ideology. Architects wanted residents to dine collectively, but over time many residents brought in private stoves, rebuilt kitchens, and reclaimed their private domestic spaces.
In reality, the residents gradually resisted the ideology embedded in the building itself. And this perhaps reveals something important. Maybe the architect's power is ultimately very limited. In the end, people decide for themselves how they want to live.
This social ambition was not limited to Narkomfin. One of the most important related examples is the Rusakov Workers' Club by Konstantin Melnikov. The project is one of the most iconic examples of late 1920s Soviet constructivism. Its most striking formal feature is the three massive projecting volumes that seem to burst outward like gear teeth or contracted muscles. These volumes are actually cantilevered auditoriums, extending dramatically from the main structure. Melnikov intentionally expressed the internal program on the exterior form. The spaces dedicated to the audience literally extend outward from the building, emphasizing the importance of collective activity. The aggressive and dynamic form was meant to symbolize the power, energy, and force of the new Soviet working class. Visually, the building almost appears to be pushing outward, under pressure. A few decades later, traces of Narkomfin's ideas can also be seen in The Linked Hybrid by Stephen Hall. In this project, the bridges connecting the towers are not merely circulation paths. They contain cafes, libraries, galleries, and public social spaces. In both projects, collective life is not just a social concept. It directly shapes architectural form.
Many architectural historians believe that Narkomfin had a direct influence on Le Corbusier's Unité de Habitation. Some even describe Narkomfin as the hidden father of the Unité de Habitation.
Most people only notice the visual similarities between the facades, but the real influence of Narkomfin on Le Corbusier was in the section, not the facade. Many scholars argue that Le Corbusier borrowed the fundamental sectional idea of the Unité from Narkomfin. Instead of conventional single-level apartments, both projects used duplex units spread across 2 floors. And the revolutionary idea was this: corridors do not need to be repeated on every floor. This strategy reduces the number of corridors, creates taller and more open interior spaces, allows for cross-ventilation and dual-aspect lighting, and enables the building to function like a vertical city.
But this movement did not last very long. During the 1930s, as Joseph Stalin consolidated power, Soviet avant-garde architecture was gradually abandoned.
Politicians argued that constructivist architecture was too abstract and difficult for ordinary people to understand. From the government's perspective, architecture now needed to express the grandeur of the state. As a result, monumental Stalinist classicism replaced the experimental architecture of the 1920s. The clearest symbol of this shift was the famous Seven Sisters skyscrapers, built between the late 1940s and early 1950s. Massive, heavy, and highly ornamental towers designed to project Soviet power. Within this new political climate, Narkomfin became the remnant of a failed dream. Ironically, the same political system that had created Narkomfin later came to see both the project and its design ideology as dangerous.
Politically, Narkomfin may have failed, but architecturally, it remains one of the most important projects in modern history. Because Narkomfin is not just a building, it is a question.
How far can architecture actually transform society? After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Narkomfin remained in a deteriorated and semi-abandoned condition for many years. Parts of the building decayed, and at one point, demolition was even considered. But architects and historians fought for decades to preserve it. Today, the building has been restored.
A building constructed almost a century ago to shape the future. And perhaps the future is still not entirely over. Thanks for watching this video.